let's head out to Florham Park, New Jersey right now. Welcome in Kim Jones, who was there to witness Fitzmagic back in Florham Park. What was it like, Kim?
He brought his hair along with him, Rhett, and that's really the headline. I tell you, you heard Ryan Fitzpatrick there talk about loyalty and the faith those guys had in him. What he was referring to was essentially his teammates, who during the entire spring talked about wanting him back, needing him back, and how valuable he was. Well, I got a little funny story that shows you all about that, because last night, right before our Total Access hit, I saw Brandon Marshall duck out of the building, and he was on his phone. And I mentioned on the air, who knows, maybe it was with Ryan Fitzpatrick. It was. Marshall told us today that because of that, because he saw our crew here, Rhett, he told Fitzpatrick to go in the back door. Otherwise, we would have had an outstanding scoop to lead TA last night. As it was, Fitzpatrick needed Brandon Marshall's code to get in the door. His no longer worked. He showed up for the team meeting 1 minute late, and at that point, Todd Bowles said, "That's a $12 million fine." There was probably some laughter, and then Bowles went along with the meeting. As far as today's practice went, Bowles said rusty, but he was happy to have Fitzpatrick back in the fold, and really he has his whole team together. And when you watch practice today, there was one pass, Fitzpatrick to Marshall, down the sideline for a touchdown, and that is why Ryan Fitzpatrick is so important on the field to this team. He's also so important off the field as well, and his teammates have talked about that at length. But when you think about Ryan Fitzpatrick in this offseason, he told us it was very difficult for him to stay away, Rhett, but he said that 3-year, $24 million offer, he said, I couldn't take that deal because that said they wanted me here for 1 year as the starter and then as a backup. And he said, I don't look at myself that way. If it sounds like Fitzpatrick is betting on himself this season with a 1-year, $12 million deal, he is. He says he's always had to do that he wasn't a #1 pick, that nothing's ever been handed to him, and he is comfortable because he believes at age 33 he's becoming a better quarterback.
Hey, you gotta love that competitive spirit, no doubt. Yeah. And boy, talking about Brandon Marshall, that's a pretty good teammate right there, huh? Giving him the backdoor warning, right? Hey, I want to sneak around the back here. We got the media out there waiting to corral you. And talking about teammates, boy, Geno Smith is one of them. He put a pretty good face on it today, it seemed like, from what we've heard, Kim. But, what does the Fitz signing really mean for him going forward?
Well, it means he's going to be the #2 quarterback. Todd Bowles has maintained all along that Fitzpatrick would be the starter. And when I asked him about that today, Todd Bowles said simply it's his job, meaning Fitzpatrick's. As far as Geno Smith goes, Brandon Marshall had a conversation with Geno last night. It was to take his temperature, so to speak, and that Geno told us that once Brandon Marshall realized that Geno was in a good place mentally with this, that the conversation turned and was more just friend to friend as far as a counseling. But here's what you need to know about Geno Smith. He did say that he believes all teams in the league right now are watching not only how he handles this, but how his 2016 season goes. He used the words that he is auditioning for every team in the league. I asked him specifically if he's asked or would ask for a trade. He did not close the door on that, but he did say that he's pretty sure if the team would want to trade him, that they would do so, no matter what his thoughts on the topic were. But, Rhett, you are correct. Geno Smith has clearly grown over the years here with the Jets. He handled this very maturely, and he said that he's proud of how he's been able to handle this, clearly disappointed that he is now the backup as Fitzpatrick returns.
Yeah, but certainly crucial in how he handles this and how 2016 goes for his future in the NFL, whether that's with the Jets or otherwise. But in talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think I heard you ask him a question about, clearly he wants to be the starter, and that's why he signed the 1-year deal. But there's some youth in that quarterback room there with Christian Hackenberg and Bryce Petty. So he's kind of taking on a dual role, though, from what it sounded like, right?
He is, because it almost, when he said he didn't want to be the backup and essentially a mentor, it led you to think, he does have 3 young quarterbacks with him in that room. And he said that he does embrace that role, Rhett. He said that he knows that the best way he can show Christian Hackenberg, Bryce Petty, and Geno Smith how to go about their jobs, but perhaps especially the rookie Hackenberg, he said is by example, by being a professional. He said, though, that a lot of guys paved the way for him in this league. And Fitzpatrick indicated he would do the same. He also said, Rhett, with a smile, the good part is all three of those quarterbacks are going to ask him a lot of questions, and he'll be happy to answer them.
Well, he certainly had the answers in 2015. Stand by there, Kim, because Heath, I want to bring you in here. I mean, you know, we've never seen a season like that from Fitzpatrick. He says he thinks he's getting better as, you know, kind of like a fine wine, aging really with and improving as he gets older. Do you feel like that's the case here for him? He can be even better?
I do. I mean, I always go trenches. I mean, you look at offensive line. I think arguably they have the potential to be better. I mean, Carpenter comes over from Seattle, Clady from Denver, Nick still in the middle. You got Bruno Giacomini at right tackle. You've got four solid pieces. And then who was the happiest guy in the NFL last year? It was Decker. I mean, he was back in a true number 2 spot, and he thrived. I mean, honestly, better than I think probably than we ever saw him, even in Denver. And then the machine does what the machine does with any quarterback. But if we're talking about Fitzy, you know, the elephant in the room was always week 17. But prior to week 17, he played the best brand of football that we had ever seen him play, mentally, physically, and he was a playmaker. He was kind of their energizer guy. That team fed off him. I think the defense fed off him. He was getting them in and out of good and bad plays. The run game was successful. A lot of that has to do with the quarterback. I wouldn't see a reason why he wouldn't be better this year than last. I mean, we talked about Carson Palmer having a rough playoff stretch. Ryan had a rough 17 stretch, you know, and so if they can get him over that hump, this team's defense, we know what they're capable of. Run game, we know what they've added, so we'll see.
Well, and I want to ask Kim, I want to bring you in here about the defense here a little bit, because obviously one of the big question marks here is Muhammad Wilkerson and how he bounces back from the injury he suffered in week 17. What are you hearing about his status?
Well, he is starting the training camp, Brett, on the PUP list, but Muhammad Wilkerson has been very clear he'll be ready for week 1, and as you guys know, with a veteran, that's truly what matters. That broken leg healed. He did a lot of his rehab here at the Jets facility all offseason as he was under that franchise tag, but never did sign that tender, and ultimately, as we know, a couple weeks ago, got that long-term deal he sought. But Muhammad Wilkerson confident that he will be ready to go week 1. I think we can all agree the Jets won't rush him here. He is exceedingly important to what this team will do, especially, obviously, what they'll do defensively.
Some of the best depth in the NFL there if Muhammad Wilkerson gets healthy up front, for sure. Kim Jones live for us there in Florham Park. Kim, thanks very much.
Tell you what, at Jets camp where Ryan Fitzpatrick is signed and already on the practice field, Kim Jones is there as well. Been a long layoff for Fitzpatrick. Last time we saw him, I believe, was on the golf course in Tahoe. How do he look today, Kim?
He looked pretty good, although Todd Bowles said rusty, Dan. I'll tell you this, he showed up for last night's team meeting a minute late. Todd Bowles said that's a $12 million fine. Well, Ryan Fitzpatrick, as we know, signed a 1-year, $12 million contract. Even he said he was surprised it took so long. There was a 3-year, $24 million deal on the table. He opted for the shorter-term contract, and today he gave us some insight into why.
I couldn't accept a deal, the deal that was made public. That was a deal that basically said, hey, we want you here, and then can you stay here as the backup? And so for me, that's not how I view myself. Felt great getting out on the field. I felt like I hadn't been out there for 7 months, but it was cool. Being in the meeting, starting to talk football and talking routes on the field and stuff. That's what this is all about. I wanted to be there for my guys. I didn't want to miss anything, and so I'm glad we got it done. I have something to prove every year. I wasn't the first pick overall in the draft. Nothing's really ever been handed to me, so I just go out and try to prove it every year.
Todd Bowles has been clear all year that when Ryan Fitzpatrick came back to the fold, he would be the starting quarterback. It's his job, Bowles said today, and indeed Fitz did take starters reps. As for Geno Smith, Bowles said he's the backup and that he knew it was coming. Bowles also added, you make your own way in this league. He's a very matter-of-fact guy, and players do like that, Dan. One note, Matt Forte held out of practice today with what Bowles described as a tweaked hamstring.
Well, they need him to be healthy. One last question on a serious note. Did Fitzpatrick go through a wind tunnel before practice?
I'll tell you this, we talked hair, and his is absolutely terrific. He did say, Dan, he's had the sides trimmed. I think you can tell that, but he is letting the top flow. I love it.
Yeah, he's fearless. I think we all love it. Somebody else with really good hair. Lindsay Rhodes. She joins us now.
I like that segue.